For this week in new social media, we're going to get into Privacy 1.0, and I call it 1.0 for a reason because really it wasn't until the internet came along where we started becoming concerned about our privacy and what that means to us. We've had a number of things happen since 9/11 that have gone through and triggered the argument or the debate as to whether what's more important to us. Is it privacy or is it security? And so we're going to look at that a little bit this week. And I'm going to start off with this first entry on the module that says hashtag ops Charlie Hebdo. And if you're not familiar with Charlie Hebdo, you probably ought to go through and Google that and find out what happened. Charlie Hebdo was a publication that was done in France, was done in Paris. It's the equivalent to the Mad magazine that we have here in the United States. It's a satirical magazine that has no reverence for anything political or religious or anything that way. It makes fun of everybody. They are an equal opportunity make funner. There, they poked particular fun at the god of Islam, and as a result of that, their offices in Paris were stormed by ISIS. 12 employees, editors, and artists were murdered there as a result of the publication. So you might want to take that out to get a little bit more background to that. But what I have posted here in terms of why this is important for us to understand is a response to what happened at Charlie Hebdo, and this came up, this hashtag Op Charlie Hebdo. Now this is it's just a graphic. If you click on this, this will take you out to a website called Pastebin. Pastebin is where hackers can go through and post code, metadata, anything they want to, and share it with each other, share it with the world, whatever the case might be. And shortly after the murders that happened at Charlie Hebdo, this was posted to Pastebin. It was posted by a group called Anonymous. And if you're not familiar with Anonymous, you might want to go through and Google them as well. Okay, they are a group of, as far as we know, they're a group of hackers who go through and retaliate for certain things like this, especially infractions that go through and trample upon our First Amendment rights. I should say, our freedom of speech, not just in the United States, but worldwide. So what they did is they hacked into Islam-army.com. And they got their users from their website. This is ISIS website. It's a website that they use to go through and recruit for their purposes of terrorism. Okay, and from that hack, they're able to go through and get the email, the last IP address, and then the password for that email, and they posted it up here on Pastebin. So as you can see, here is an email address. Here is the IP address where that message was generated from, and then here is the actual password to get into that user's email. Okay, this is what's called metadata. It doesn't contain data as far as the messages are concerned, but it's data about how they might transfer data back and forth, including these very important email addresses. So I'm going to scroll through this to give you an idea of how significant of a dump this was. And you can believe that the day after, or if not the very moment that this was posted on Pastebin, that this caught the attention of organizations worldwide that go through and try to find out what's going on with ISIS and international terrorism, not the least of which were the CIA, MI6, organizations out of France and Belgium and so on. I'm still scrolling on this. You see how comprehensive this was. So this is pretty significant in terms of the breach of privacy. And you might be thinking, well, this is a good thing. And I think it's a good thing too, that they are able to go through and find this information and start rooting out who these terrorists are and where these terrorist cells were. Within days after this posting, there were raids on apartments and domiciles in Brussels, in Paris, in London, and in the United States as well. So this information served our fight against terrorism very well. Okay, but to what cost? And I say, for me personally, this was worth the cost of that by getting this information up there. But the other side to this is This is how vulnerable we all are, okay? Right down to our email address, our last IP usage, and the password that we might be using for that. None of that is safe. It's all out there. So that's to go through and just kind of illustrate that concept to you. I think it's fascinating and it's frightening at the same time. Next on the module for this week, as far as Privacy 1.0 is concerned, is a video recording of Valerie Plame Wilson. Valerie was a covert operation of the Central Intelligence Agency, and she was outed by her own administration, by the George W. Bush administration, and was done so to go through and protect certain interests there. So politically, this kind of gives us an idea, I'm waiting for it to go through and load here, of the importance of what privacy means to us on a global scale, on a political scale, certainly here, for the administration of George W. Bush. Valerie goes through and talks about what happened to her. I want you to get a better grasp, a better understanding of that and how it relates back to 9/11, which for us really is the benchmark of the debate of whether or not we need to have our privacy or our security. It's almost as if the two cannot coexist. If that's not enough to go through and maybe get you oriented to this whole argument, the next thing I would like you to get into under Privacy 1.0 is click on the United States of Secrets. This, if you click on this placeholder, that will take you out to pbs.org, where you will find the documentary. There's a two-part documentary that was produced by the folks at Frontline, the United States of Secrets. Scroll down to part 1 and part 2. There's 3 hours worth of watching here, and I promise you, you won't be bored by that. If you're living in southern Utah, you want to click that key UED is your local station that way, and that'll allow you to get into. You shouldn't have to pay for this. Click on that, and that will start. Then the documentary part 1 and part 2. This is pretty imperative for us to understand because it gets into the backstory of the one individual who really started opening up this argument as far as privacy versus security, and that individual's name is Edward Snowden. And if you want to learn more about him, for extra credit, I have this discussion post put up. It's a link that goes out to a feature film about Edward Snowden. If you click on this, it'll take you out to the trailer, but it'll also show you how you can watch this either on YouTube. I'm sure you could download it off of iTunes or find it on Netflix at this point as well. But this will give you an interesting narrative background as to Edward Snowden's culpability and introducing this argument of privacy versus security, and is a great companion, I think, to the documentary series from Frontline as far as the United States of Secrets is concerned. Here the question is asked, what is The Guardian? The Guardian is a website and newspaper, as is the Washington Post. These two media outlets were instrumental in opening a door for Edward Snowden to get the data that he stole, okay, to get that out there and to go through and make the point that he was trying to make. So the question here is, what's their responsibility with all that data turned over to them, okay? So if you want, respond to that. I don't have a due date on that, and I don't have points ascribed to that. I will give you points according to the level of the depth that you decided to get into within that. All I have for you really this week is another discussion post, and it deals with this. It's called A Message to the Federal Government. And really, this was based off of a message to our customers that the Chief Executive Officer, Tim Cook, of Apple put out to the customers when Apple was asked by the Federal Bureau of Investigation to go through and create a back door into their operating systems so they could open up an iPhone that a certain user had when he, Syed Farouk, and his wife, Tashin Malik, went through and targeted a number of individuals at a Christmas party, killing 14 and injuring 22 more. Again, if you don't know about that, you probably need to research that as well to understand the full impact of what Tim Cook was asking, what he was resisting the FBI's command to go through and operate, give them that back door to their operating system. And in a message to our customers, Cook goes through and tries to explain why. Here, I'm asking you to answer this question. What do you think is protected under the Fourth Amendment when it comes to your own encrypted data on your phone? So that might require you to take a look at the Fourth Amendment and its wording and syntax there. And then, kind of as an afterthought, I put in, what does that encrypted data say about you? Okay, I'm not asking you to show us or tell us what your encrypted data is. But if I were to hack into your phone, what would I find out about you as a result of the encrypted data that you have? Now, the idea encrypted might be new to you. You might want to look that up as well. It means it's protected by a code. Okay, it might be a double identification process, which I'm hoping you're using for your iPhone. So I'm asking you to go through and read through this and post there as well. A couple of other things I think that are still left on the module or just for your edification. One being, where we are, there we go, securing the iPhone. I always feel like as a TED Talk that gets into the concept that most of our data that is public out there, like our license plate information, is being recorded. And what does that mean? Why should we be concerned about that? Let's see. Yeah, Charlie Hebdo, if you went through and if you watched last week on What Me Worry, this was the editor of Mad Magazine. He talks about Charlie Hebdo and what happened. If you haven't watched that last week, you might want to watch it to give you a little bit more background information, because it's critical. What he's talking about is terms of our freedom of speech and how then those are going to relate to our constitutionally guaranteed freedom of privacy and what that means in terms of the country's security. Okay, hope I've given you a lot to think about and write about this week. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.